Hey everybody, welcome back to Old World Legends, where we focus on growing the community. I'm your host Mike, and with me as always is Evan.
Yep. Legends factions. That's what we're doing today. Talking about all of the ways that they can try to stay competitive with the latest hotness, right? It's the old versus the
Well,
new.
sort of. So actually, we had already recorded an episode where we really focused on some tips and tricks for all the core factions in terms of, hey, we can't give you the silver bullet to deal with the Sky Lanterns. They are indeed challenging, though we do believe GW will address that at some point. But we had not gotten to the Legacy factions, not because we don't love Legacy factions. Everyone who watches our channel knows that we absolutely love Legacy. In fact, we own many Legacy armies and have them featured prominently at all of our events. But we actually had been recording for about 3 hours and really tired. And everybody told us in the comments, hey guys, please cover the Legacy factions. So here we are. We're going to actually go through continuing. Basically, this is the second half of that episode where we're going to go through. Let's go through each Legacy faction, talk about what can they do when facing Sky Lanterns, maybe some tips, maybe some tricks you hadn't thought about yet. And then we'll close it out with a little bonus where we'll talk about, okay, now you're going to be Cathay versus Cathay. What do you do in that situation? So where do we start first, Evan?
All right, so we're starting off first with the Chaos Dwarves. So, okay, let's leave it open. The Chaos Dwarves army list just as a reference to give you the idea of what kind of units are in here.
Mm-hmm.
So, something definitely that happened was that, when you lower the casting values of most of every wizard, trying to just magic missile things to death is certainly a lot harder, especially if you don't just have, oh, my army just gets to have bonuses to cast all the time for some reason.
Yeah.
I did point out that we talked about the Chaos Dwarves in 1.5 that they do have an item that's almost like a power scroll, but instead of you swap the dice, you just get to keep all three. So I think that that's pretty useful as a potential option to just be able to make your wizard still able to do what they want to do, whether it's cast a magic missile or cast some kind of a buff on a unit. Chaos Dwarves do have lots of artillery. In fact, some of their artillery has the thunderous impact kind of like ability, similar to the obviously famous Cathay and Grand Cannon. I do think that when you have the indirect type artillery, it is obviously more difficult to try to get a hit for sure. However, you can fire it from totally out of line of sight. They can't full on hide from you. So that's kind of the trade off. The I forgave it's the magma cannon that has the D6 damage on the central hull. So that's kind of a relic of maybe before they went through and decided that D6 damage was too swingy. They changed all the other artillery pieces, but Chaos Dwarves still have that. So having a kind of a high spike ability for your artillery damage against the lantern is particularly interesting. I think it's not usually super good because a lot of the time you're trying to shoot at something tough to 6 and it's only like a strength 5 on the central hull, but the lantern luckily is only tough to 5, so you do have that as a potential threat ability, right? And then you also just have Hobgoblin Bolt Throwers, which are exactly as useful as the regular Goblin Bolt Throwers at just being like extra high strength shots. So those are kind of your original kind of shooting things. And if people don't know, right, the reason why we often focus on, okay, if you're playing in Sky Lanterns, you're focusing on shooting, it's because trying to fight them in combat is nearly impossible because you can just do feign flight, so get out of your range, especially if you're infantry, right? You could do stand and shoot, which just does a lot of damage to you and gets them combat res. Or if you just win, if you get to combat, then they're either unbreakable or they can just do their disengage thing and fly away from you on their own turn. So unless if you're overrunning into them, you can't really do melee into them. It just doesn't really do almost anything.
It's not that it's impossible. It's just that with the basic units are not going to be effective at doing this versus you have to have something that's durable enough and fast enough. First of all, you have to be fast enough to catch it. Second of all, you have to be durable enough to survive the stated shoot reaction from it. And third, you have to hit hard enough to basically you really need to one-shot these things or combo charge them in order to do that. And so it's just that really limits the number of things that truly are a true threat to them, which is why we've talked about some of the other rosters, a big brick of Pegasus Knights with a Duke, right? Or not more than one Dragons, right? Multi-charging these things. And I think definitely in Chaos Dwarfs, you still have the option. You do have the Flying Taurus, right? But then you also have you do have the Black Oak War Boss and the Wyvern, same as the Orcs. So that is a very effective combo for doing a ton of damage, and totally with the right weapon, the right combo can one-shot the Lanterns in the right circumstances. So there's definitely some good combos there. The War Machines Evan already covered really well, right? So tons of War Machine threat, and I think you still have dwarf units, right? So again, if you're taking big bricks of orcs or black orcs, they will be more vulnerable to the lanterns. But if you are taking some of the dwarf units, look for drilled, where they have that as options to again spread out. And it's really just being in that 5 wide by 5 deep is the most dangerous formation versus lanterns. But again, if you have a 10 wide rifle unit, right? You're far less susceptible to the bombs as you are if you are really ranked up. So you just have to be careful about those things. So the Chaos Dwarves do have a lot of those abilities. And as Evan said, you also have magic missiles and you have scrolls and things. It's not about, hey, I need to be able to cast magic missile 10 times 100% of that. It's just making sure, that one turn, whether that's turn 2 or turn 1, that you can focus fire and ideally try to pull down 1, if not 2 lanterns in the same turn. And being able to have that near guarantee this magic missile is going to go off might just be the difference of that 1 or 2 wound to take that balloon down.
I will say that the Infernal Guard having like the fire glaives and being pretty heavy infantry for having like the heavy armor and potentially shields and stuff like that is a pretty tough target, even with Dragonfire Bombs. The main problem with Dragonfire Bombs is the amount of damage they do for how many points the guys that they're killing cost. So it's not so much that they do a lot of damage, it's that, but think about how many points the guys they just blew up were. Like the number of Inner Circle Knights that die, and they're 35 points each when they get blown up by that. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I saw
one other thing to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Evan, Chaos Dwarfs have the fire resistant armor, right? So
that's only
that helps
on
as well.
some of the characters and the Infernal Ironsworn. Do the Infernal Guard have that? Why don't we go check the Infernal Guard, right?
Let's go look. Isn't it a 5-up save, ward save versus flaming attacks?
So the Infernal Ironsworn are the first one up, and they definitely have it. It's the Black Shard Armor special rule.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Infernal Guard.
It's just there's not that many flaming attacks in the game, and the Sky Lanterns happen to be one of the few things that this rule will come into play.
Because the problem is that most people try to avoid flaming attacks like the plague, because some people, like Chaos Dwarves, have a Black Shard Armor where you have like that 5-up ward versus flaming. And if you have that rule, and apparently now you're going to have to buy this on every Infernal Guard unit you have, then the Dragonfire Bombs are a lot weaker. I had a situation where my 2 Knights of the White Wolf, who also have a 5-up ward versus flaming, charged the very wounded Sky Lantern, and it did stand and shoot. It got 2 wounds through my 2+ armor save, and then I rolled 2 5-ups on my ward save. So just having an additional save can be like a really fun thing to have and keep you alive. So yeah, that's probably a big deal because, like I was saying, people usually try to avoid taking weapons with flaming attacks like the plague, but the options compared to the Dragonfire Bombs is just silly how much more it usually does. So Dragonfire Bombs do like 3 times more damage than the Gunpowder Bombs, which is like the normal free upgrade or whatever. So you probably buy the Black Shard Armor, and you also take, Fire Glaives, because you're just going to be a unit that's pretty durable, has a ward save now, and just shoots. And then you just shoot at them, and even if you have to turn around because they flew behind you, you just keep shooting at them, and then you just shoot, and the game becomes you shoot at them. Now, the good news is, if they try, and I think most Cathay players will probably do this, if they try to kind of rush you at the beginning with their Sky Lanterns, then they're totally unsupported. They don't have like a Dispeller in range, they don't have any infantry that can back them up, so the good news is that when people do that strategy, and they're just being kind of lazy and not even trying to support their units, potentially you can have a pretty good day into this. I am now just realizing, though, that if they rush and get point blank with you, it might be pretty hard to shoot your bombardment artillery at them when they're minimum 12-inch range or
well, to your point,
guys, right?
that brings up another point. If you're facing off for Sky Lanterns, don't just deploy on the front line. Mm-hmm. I know everybody typically just does that. They go, oh, this is the farthest ahead I could deploy off to the 12-inch deployment, and they put all their units like directly on the front line. Now, at the same time, you don't want to be direct on the very back end of the table, because if you panic, you go bye-bye. So it's finding that sweet spot, and again, making sure to spread your units out. Another thing that, again, Chaos Dwarfs have, they have very cost-effective fast cavalry with their Goblin Riders. They have Wolf Riders, that's right, very, very cost-effective. That's not that they're going to do damage to the balloons, but they're super cheap. So there's both, hey, put them in front on the table, not, they're going to get obliterated in a shooting phase, but being able, they can zone out quite a large space in terms of preventing the balloons from being able to fly somewhere. So it's not necessarily about you're trading to kill something, it's you're preventing the balloons from going to a certain location. And or they're great to put behind your units. If you're worried about the balloons flying over, because the balloon has a very large base, you have a few of these behind your back ranks, you could actually block them out from being able to fly over your units, and that's incredibly powerful. And if they decide to shoot at the wolf riders instead of your units, then you're probably pretty happy about that too.
Yeah, and I believe also the Sneaky Gits, which is kind of the special unit of oh yeah, it's no the Hobgoblin Cutthroats. That's the ones, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, so you have the big blocks of cutthroats. They can just have short bows, and you just have a million arrow shots. And guess what? It looks like a really juicy target for the lantern to go bomb and stuff. But if they waste a whole turn just shooting these guys, you're laughing in the inside
Right.
because you're like, who cares? 3 points,
There's so
right?
few points.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we've got the Sneaky Gits somewhere in this PDF. That is that
Yeah.
those guys can ambush and then come in and try to disrupt those those artillery pieces. And
Yeah.
then finally, I think we might also want to mention that as much as we've been talking about shooting for everything else, I think that the Iron Demon may be taking keeping the Skullcracker for those like a bajillion impact hits, so that you can just charge this thing at Sky Lanterns and get those impact hits. Where the stand and shoot probably won't do very much to you, right?
No, it's so tough. The
So
a single sky lantern stand and shoot, you'll be lucky if you get one wound through. This
right.
thing is so durable.
Yeah, and then you just have some impact hits. You do a lot of grinds. You got a couple stomps go into it too. And then sure, if it's not dead, it runs away. But guess what? Then you shoot it. I feel like the biggest problem is if you only have a bunch of melee infantry and you ever even make it to them, then they get away from you, and then you're like, so what? So normally, if you catch an enemy unit and you just keep winning in combat res, you can just kind of lock it
Mhm.
down until it dies. And with these units, they
Yeah.
said, nah, they
Mhm.
don't. They have feign flight, but for after combat, which is kind of weird. So that's a thing. So you can kind of just do treat the impact hits like doing shooting damage, right?
Yep. Yeah. So Chaos Dwarfs actually, out of all the legacy factions, have some of the most tools to actually deal with
Probably,
Sky
yeah.
Lanterns. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It's just that they do have a lot more options than all the other rosters don't have nearly as many as the Chaos Dwarfs
And
have
they don't have to
currently.
bend themselves into too weird of a shape to be in
It's
that
just right. It's just
position.
pretty normal that you'd want to take the things we're talking about. You're pretty
Yeah.
much going to want to take in a normal list anyway.
So let's talk about the demons. Um,
Oh, that one's a little trickier.
yeah, because
They
there's
do
also like
not have
four
as many
demons.
options. They do not have nearly as many options as the Chaos Dwarfs do. That's for sure.
So you have skull cannons, um, because they're
They
like a
do.
chariot and they could shoot, and cannonballs can bounce through Sky Lantern
Yep.
bases, which is cool.
hmm
You've
hmm
got basically everything in Slanesh doesn't help you. All those impact hits I was bragging about before, the kind of like a lot of the AP0 impact hits here, or just really fragile frames. I just don't think that that's going to basically do anything.
No, not the Slanesh, but they have the
Yeah,
Furies though. And if you take the juiced up Furies, they could do quite a few hits on the attack, and they are skirmishing, right?
yeah.
So that does help when they're even when you're charging, right? So it'd be -1 for charging, -2 for being skirmish. So that makes a big difference when you're making that charge, that additional -1 for not nearly as many hits are getting it through. So definitely, I would consider not some 5-man blocks of Furies, but some larger blocks of Furies, especially if they're Corn Furies. They hit, aren't they? Do they get up to what strength
They
5?
have
Or are they
strength
strength 4?
five because they are they have the Corrin for +1 strength on the charge, and they also have
That's
Furious Charge innately. So they just have like
really
two strength 5 attacks.
powerful.
They don't have AP on their attacks. Now the lanterns
Yeah,
often only have a 4-up armor save, but you're just talking about can I just throw meat at them?
throw
The
enough
thing,
dice.
yeah, the thing I was thinking about recently is more often actually taking more MSU units because the Sky Lanterns can so often do more damage than like your unit even has models in it. So why not lean into that by taking small units? Like why give them a 15-man Black Orc unit to kill 11 of them in one go instead of just like a lot of little units of things like Furies, things like chariots and stuff that are just kind of running around more
Yeah,
solo. And then
because they're
sure they can kill
multi-charge.
like because if you only have 2 lanterns and they only have Dragonfire bombs, then they can only Dragonfire 2 units at a time, and that is instead of losing 25 infantry from one block, like my friend Andres did against 2 lanterns doing it into his. They were Tomb Guard, and they still lost 20 something guys to in one turn. Just have multiple littler units, and then you have less problems with that. I think Zinch is probably the best one here, just because you just have a million magic missiles on everybody.
Yep.
So you're just casting like a wild person, and just seeing how much of those things stick. At the very least, it's a lot of shooting, right? And then Slanesh, I think it's incredibly fragile, and your thing about being fast and having initiative is not really going to matter, so you just die. Then Nurgle,
No,
you've got
one more.
yeah, Nurgle, you've got regen, and I don't think any of the Nurgle stuff's flammable, so you just get to keep your regen save. I do think Plague Drones are actually one of the best units at fighting Skylanterns because they're toughness 5, and then they're just like, we just have dudes and we just whack you. So they just get to keep doing
they're
that.
reasonable speed because they fly,
Yeah.
so they're pretty fast. Yeah, not plague bearers, but plague drones, the guys in the big giant fly things, are definitely a threat to Sky Lanterns for sure. Right, everyone's favorite, the Bloodthirster. Again, he hits like a truck, but the problem is he doesn't have the best armor in the world, and if you roll enough dice at him, he will fail his saves, and
Yeah,
he
I think he
doesn't
only has
have
like
a bajillion
7
wounds either.
wounds. 6?
Yeah, he doesn't have a ton of
6.
wounds. That's the problem, right? If he had 10 wounds, different. So this is a situation where he really needs to go in with something else, ideally something else. Could be absorbing the shots, and it's just not a ton. The benefit is, again, even if you're not using now, we have our old world legends, our owl legacy errata, which means in our rule set we let the demons keep their armor, their ward save, no matter what, even versus magical attacks. That being said, the attacks from the Sky Lanterns are not magical, so at least that is one benefit. At least I don't think they are. They have every other rule. I don't think they have that
No,
rule.
they're not. Yeah.
So that is one benefit at least the demons do, even in the out of the box legacy rules, get to keep their ward save versus that. And again, I'd also encourage you, while the normal demons of Slanesh are not the best, the Keeper of Secrets is incredibly fast, can hit very hard, has the potential to one-shot a balloon if it gets the charge off. Threat range is very far. And the Greater Demon Disease, to your point, Evan, you stack that. It has, again, how many magic missiles can this thing fire off? And because it's flying, right, it's able to position itself ideally outside of the range of the Cathay wizards, so that he'll get one faded dispel and that will be it.
Yeah, if there even are any wizards, they often just don't have that. Yeah, I do think that if you look in here, the Beast and Nurgle also are a relatively slow, but they are a random mover, and random movement is also great here because you don't have to stand and shoot against it.
Oh, are they? Are they 3d6 or 2d6?
Oh, maybe I was playing against somebody who
maybe
I was playing against somebody who thought they had random movement from a previous edition. Because he also there was this game I played and he thought his Keeper of Secrets had a 4-up ward save, and I was like, wow, that sounds really good, and it doesn't.
Mistakes were made. So
Yeah.
no, yeah, they're not. But so those are the things you could do. But yeah, and to your point, those cannons, right? They're not the best cannons in the world, but you will have a much more enjoyable experience. If you just do one thing, right, it's not going to be enough. So you're going to need to have Furies and at least one, if not two, greater demon threats, and the cannons and the magic missiles. The problem is getting it all on your list and the points.
Well, and also keep in mind that most people who play demons don't have all 4 different kinds of flavor of demon.
They typically don't. Most people choose their favorite god, and they really lean into that one god. And if you only choose one god, you're gonna be very challenging to face this lanterns. I really recommend, at least while the lantern meta is strong, and it is strong at the moment, that you consider a temporary Chaos God alliance to take down Cathay, since they hate chaos anyway, and so the Chaos Gods are conspiring to take down the Sky Lanterns. So convince yourself it's a temporary alliance to take down Cathay.
I know, right?
All will work out, right?
All right. So next up is the Dark Elves.
Love some Dark Elves. Absolutely one of the coolest factions.
Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier today. I think that the biggest thing you have is that you can have the High Sorceress, Supreme Sorceress with the Black Staff and Illusion and a crap load of Focus Familiars, which gives you the ability to just do illusion crap, but from way farther away. And you can
explain to people what the Focus Familiars do for those who are not familiar, because it's really cool.
Well, if you're not Focus Familiared enough with it, you get to cast a spell from 12 inches. You get to cast that spell, one use only, from 12 inches farther away, and they're only 10 points. You can just buy many of them.
It's huge.
Yes.
12 inches more. Well, that's massive. Yeah.
So that gives you 27 inches threat for your Miasmic Barrage, or for example, it's 21 inches for a Column of Crystal. Now, if you cast Column of Crystal and you just put it in front of a Sky Lantern, it cannot fly over it and it cannot skirmish around it. It can move backwards. it can move
But just to be
sideways.
clear,
But
this is
like,
relative to the community you're playing in the FAQ. As far the vast majority of communities, including our own, have FAQ'd it that the crystal column, based upon the way it's read, means infinitely high. You cannot fly over it. So just double check that with your local community.
yeah. So I think that that's useful, and again, Black Staff gives you that extra. It basically every single spell you cast is you have a power scroll, which is incredible and very dark elfy
Yeah.
because you also have more miscast you can potentially roll. So that's kind of
Mhm.
cool. You definitely have to just then roll the right spell, which is just a crapshoot. Because you could just pick illusion and have the Black Staff, and then just not roll Miasma Mirage or Column of Crystal, and then I don't know what else you're
Yeah.
doing.
Well, how many familiar focus familiars can you take with also the lore familiar?
4. Oh, with Lore Familiar? If
Four.
you take Lore Familiar, you can take 7, because they're 10 points each, and you can take Lore Familiar. But then you're only +2 to cast, so I mean,
Pros
Miasma
and
Mirage is
cons. Yeah.
really hard to cast. That's my
Yeah.
whole
Because it's
vibe.
really good. Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
great spell. It's powerful. It's hard to
If you
cast.
mostly care about the
Um,
Column of Crystal, then I would both say you take Lore Familiar, and then you just take as many
Again,
of
I
those.
don't love the column of crystal. It is very powerful, but it also you place it out there and it could get dispelled. I mean, yeah, it's hard to dispel it, but it happens, and then suddenly that one trick pony you had, it's a lot of points and a really hard odds to get it off. It's just not reliable enough, in my opinion, that I wouldn't build a strategy around it.
So then you have the potential option of just I take 2 dragons.
And they're
I
good dragons.
Yeah,
The Dark Elf
and
dragons are really good ones.
it's probably one of the better double dragon under 500 point lists because you can still have a Dreadlord with the Pendant of Caliph, and the Supreme Sorceress can have Talisman of Protection, and they can both be on a dragon, both for 500.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that said, Mike, you were saying send 2 dragons at the same lantern. If the lantern's a character, only one of them get to fight it, so because it can just
Yeah,
challenge you.
well, send the dragons at the other lantern.
Right.
So again, this depends on the community you're playing into, right? So just to get convey it to everybody if you're not familiar with it. If you're in a 2,000 point game, if you just play the match play GW guide raw, just rules as written, technically your opponent could take 6 lanterns, 3 of them could be characters.
Yeah.
Now, the vast majority of communities, as far as we know, have all done some sort of ruling on that for composition. It feels like communities either fall into the camp of restricting it to you can just take 3 lanterns in total, whatever slots they're in, and not restricting the two characters that people are typically taking, or many communities have now, because until GW addresses the challenge, and this is something we're considering too, is dropping it to no 2 lanterns in total, and only one might be a character. I think the majority of communities are playing that way, but again, with this video and advice we're giving you, check with your local community and your local TOs and player base and find out how are they playing it in your local scene.
All right, so if we move on with this, I mean, regardless of how people play it, challenges are still a challenge. So if they can issue it, in fact, Mike, some people are under the impression that because the regular non-character Sky Lantern has a champion, that champion who's riding the chariot can then challenge and then force you to only fight him with one guy, which is insane. But okay.
Well, let's address Sky Lantern FAQ issues later.
Yeah. As far as with the rest of the Dark Elf list go, you have crossbows. I mean, Cold One
Yeah,
Knights.
bolt throwers.
Yeah, the bolt throwers are terrible, so we don't need to talk about that. You have, in fact, if you want a bolt thrower, there's this thing called a Scourge Runner Chariot, which has a bolt thrower on it, and it's only like 20 more points, but it's just way tougher so it basically just doesn't die as easy. So you can take Scourge Runner Chariots and have bolt throwers on them. That's fine.
Mm-hmm. You do have scouts, though, right? So that's one
Yeah.
advantage that not every army has scouts. Trust me, I wish my orcs did. So you can be scout again. Please make sure you take at least one of units, if not 2. Just giving yourself one additional turn before the full force of the Sky Lanterns hit your army can make a big difference, right? In terms of being able to take 1 or 2 of them down before they get there. So making sure you have at least, I recommend 2 units of scouts. And again, there's versions where you're like, hey, you go first, you sit them out there, you're really zoning some critical board space off. But then there's also versions where you're just taking cheap, cost-effective skirmishing units again, or fast cavalry, put them behind your units, block off the Sky Lanterns from being able to fly behind you. It's a very effective strategy. Them getting behind you is one of the most challenging things for most armies, and do what you can to zone it out. And you can look for those cost-effective fast cav skirmishers where you can space them out. right?
Yeah,
Board space.
I think the main play with Dark Elves is simply you have a dragon, whether it's the Dreadlord or the Sorceress, because the Sorceress can still outfight the Lantern with her 0 attacks and just do the dragon's attacks.
She's still on a dragon.
Right,
Yep.
so the dragon can do it, and then you just put your Dark Riders, however they need to do this, in a Congo line behind the Lantern, so that as soon as it chooses to disengage, it pops off the table. So it has to choose not to do that, and then it is just stuck there until it dies. You can do that, and then as soon as a unit is stuck in combat, you start doing damage to it on their own turn, and you stop it from shooting. So it doesn't shoot you, and it doesn't do, and you do damage to it on their turn. So you start doing, 12 turns of damage instead of 6 turns of damage. So I think that the Dark Elves are the key army out there that is going to do I bait you into my charge lane with the dragon, and then as soon as I charge with the dragon and you feint flight or whatever, cool, my fast cav run into a Congo line behind you, and now you cannot run away anymore, or you're dead.
Now the conga line, it's easier said than done to pull off that trick. If you can pull it off, that's wonderful. There's still value in setting up ambushes where, like, okay, I can't conga line you off the board, but I can still position my incredibly fast Dark Riders, right? Units of 5, cheap, cost-effective, wait till the right moment, ambush them, and then spread them out and put them in a position where, okay, I can't get the balloon off the board, but I can prevent it so you can't fly this direction, right? Whether I don't want you to fly left or I don't want you to fly right, I might not be able to get you to fly backwards, but if you're flying backwards, that's probably a good thing for me, right? So there are still, even if you can't do the conga line trick, you could still zone out sections saying you can't go here. Now you're dictating where the balloon can go, and you get some practice under your belt. That could be very powerful in saying, like, I know your only escape is here, and that's exactly where I've positioned my follow-up counterpunch for when you do go over there, right? So there are layers of effectiveness to this.
All right, and then lastly, I'll probably just mention that the Shades, who are, they just do barely any damage at all. But what I learned last night, because I played a game yesterday, if you have Evasive, you can very often, at the very least, get into long range against the Dragonfire Bomb shots. If not, just you waste all of their shots because now you're just out of range now. So having an evasive unit can be incredibly good against the Dragonfire Bombs, because even if they walk 1 inch away from you, as soon as they try to shoot you and you can evade away, you can then just be not targeted at all. So or another -1 because now you're long range. And so Shades can do that. Dark Riders, there's actually no fast cav in the game that has evasive as far as I know, but I was doing it last night with Blazing Sun Empire Knights. So Empire Knights that had evasive. It was incredible. But that was the only thing they were good at. It was just running away. Yeah, and if you're wondering why we're not mentioning, you could have a Hydra or a Charybdis. Yeah, no, they're just going to die. Like, anything that's not toughness 6 just dies to its shooting very easily.
It's just the volume of his attacks. That's right.
Number of volume, yeah, for sure. All right.
Right, so we move on?
Yes, Lizardmen.
Lizardmen, super cool army.
So we start off with the idea that I've been, trying to push for a while, is that you have the Slan Mage Priest in your Temple Guard or your whatever, and you just make that whole block ethereal because nothing in the Cathay list except Ring of Jet has magical attacks. So yeah, that's a really good sturdy block that can very slowly walk across the table and not take any damage, as long as you can continuously cast it. Now, if we had the old +4 to cast system, we'd be fine. In fact, High Magic would be the best lore in the game because it'd be the anti-Cathay lore. But because it is not +4 to cast and it's only +2, you are gonna have to get lucky. That's just how it works. Now, I think you can compound your luck by just taking Power Scrolls and just 20 points to not lose half your unit that turn. Sounds like a good deal to me.
Keep in mind, you don't need to be ethereal 6 turns.
Yeah.
It's a 6-turn game. You do not need to have that spell go off all 6 turns. You need the spell to go off probably twice.
Yeah.
2 key turns is when you need to go off. So I know everyone's very reluctant I don't want to spend points on 25 points to a one-time thing or 20 points for this and that. But if you ask yourself, if you could spend 50 points and guarantee the Sky Lanterns can't hurt this powerful unit, for 2 turns, that's a pretty powerful statement, right? So you should consider taking them seriously.
So next up, we've got the idea that you could have just an absolute ton of like Bastiladons and Ancient Stegodons that have the magic missile solar engines and stuff like that to just try to magic missile the crap out of people. I do think that that's quite interesting in just a normal list. The main problem is that that's fine versus the Lantern stuff. That's good. It's also incredibly cannon baity, and you're gonna really have to struggle to not just get because the problem is normally when you face cannons, you can either not show yourself to multiple cannons at once because of the terrain. You can kind of only show yourself to
Yep.
one, or
Yep.
maybe you just eat one turn of it and then you could get into them. But Cathay, because of the double firing cannon roll, if a single cannon sees you for one turn and it gets to double fire into you, you can almost just guarantee that a Bastillodon or an Ancient Stegodon will die to that. And them spiking it so that they can get to kill you in one go instead of you making it across the table or instead of you, for example, moving into a good position, is they're just always going to do that. So that makes it a lot harder to try and not die. I think that you can potentially keep your units, the different behemoths next to each other so that the cannonballs don't go through them. But see again my problem with the double fire. The double fire really ruins a lot of builds against cannons.
It's the positioning. So positioning is very, very critical with these things. They are effective, but you have to be careful that you don't expose the units or too many of the units to the cannons. Now, that being said, right, if you could trade one Bastillodon and you know the balloon's going to die and then you know the cannon's going to kill you, totally worth the trade, right? Absolutely. So you have to think about that. Also look for, again, hills, right? So cannons are powerful. And I know we have our Old World Legends FAQs for cannon balls on hills, but even GW in their FAQ, they have clarity on being on a hill is actually a pretty reasonable defense versus cannons. They have to be a lot more accurate. You're a lot less susceptible to the bounce if you're on the hill. So there are some things you can be looking for that will help you versus the cannon situation. Another thing to keep in mind is while poison is not nearly as good as it used to be, that's no doubt about that. Again, there is something to be said about at the right moment, the right time. You don't want to have, 40 skinks marching across the open field. They'll just be obliterated instantly. So don't do that. Instead, again, you can be holding your skink. It's a 6-turn game. Don't just run at the Cathay player just because he's there. You need to find ways to bait him to you. You need to wait till your flyers or your ambushers get to his cannons in the back. Don't try to win on turn 2. Right? So this is a version where use the terrain to your advantage. If you can, find some awesome places to hide bricks of skinks that have poison. Are they all going to wound the lantern with its 4-up save? No, but they very likely with poison still be able to get a couple wounds through. And you need to stack things and focus fire to take the lanterns down. And poison can, with a lot of shots, get a couple wounds through. Now you add that with some magic missiles, you add that with some artillery, eventually you are going to tear down that balloon. Just you can't rely on one source. And again, if at the right time on turn 3, you could trade a 40 skinks, but a balloon is going to be taken down, absolutely you're going to make that trade, right? Just think about it.
I do think that the old blood on Carnosaur probably has a better than average chance for kind of mounted character guy to do enough damage into that. Mostly because usually the Carnosaur suffers a lot from trying to fight someone whose weapon skill 7 and having to hit them on a 5. But because the old blood, you don't have as many weapon skill problems in this matchup, so you're just trying to just do a sheer amount of damage, and that guy can be pretty violent. So I think that's
it's catching the balloon is the challenge with it, right? He absolutely hits like a truck. But the problem is he doesn't have the mobility of a dragon.
Yeah, I will say that what I was going to say is that I think that you don't use the skinks to shoot the lanterns at all. And my main goal with the skinks is run across the table as fast as possible to either, one, if the guy wants to shoot dragonfire bombs at the 50 points of 10 skinks, go for it. That's a bad decision on his part. He can do that if he wants to. What I want to do is I want my skink skirmishers to just block the line of sight of your cannon so it can't see where it wants to shoot. Because you have to be able to see the spot on the ground. So as long as they're not already on a hill, you can get your skink skirmishers eventually, once they move 12 inches and they already vanguard. So 24 inches the first turn. Just be on a big conga line blocking their ability to see your Bastillodons and stuff behind it, so they just can't fire where they want to fire. That's a suggestion for me, especially because if they fire a cannonball through the skinks and they hit one guy, you don't have to remove the guy they kill. You can just pick a different guy. So you can also take multiple cannonballs and then not even let them have a firing lane open up for that second shot, right?
Yep, and if they blast that skink unit to pieces in that shooting turn, then cool. Have the next 10-man unit take its place the next turn.
Yeah,
they're so cheap.
Yeah, I think that's probably my best. And the thing is, Cathay doesn't have crossbows. They don't have... the Jade Warriors are still kind of slow. So if they're trying to do Ring of Jets into your skink skirmishers, again, victory. If they're ever shooting at your skirmishers, victory. You won. That's what you want, because you're so cheap that you just don't care if they die. You're good.
Yep. So, but the main thing, the Lizardmen, right, like most of the armies, you're going to need a few turns to whittle down the Sky Lanterns with your magic missiles, with your slan, with your spells, with your artillery from your war machines. So you are really trying to buy yourself that. How do I reduce the Cathay shooting for 2 or 3 turns? Because that's how long it's going to take me to pull those lanterns down without losing too many units in the turn.
All right, so ogres are next. I mean, you have a big problem. The biggest problem that you really don't want to have is the Sky Lantern's able to scout. They get the first turn, even though they scouted, which sucks if that happens to you, right? Because you should get the +1 if they do that, right? And then they just march
Dice.
1 inch in front of your big block of dudes, so they shoot you, and now you cannot move under them or anything, so you have to either declare a charge or not move, in which case they will get to stand and shoot again. And if that happens to you, wow, I feel bad for you. So I think this might be another good example of maybe you need to spread out, because if you have your Tyrant and your Slaughtermaster and your 9 Iron Guts in one unit, it's incredibly good. And I think a lot of Cathay players don't even realize how good this is. Just park your Lantern intentionally in front of the enemy so that they cannot freaking go anywhere. Most people have this intention of, no, I don't want you to be able to get to me too easy. I'll go off to the side. That's actually, I think you just go in the front. But why not? You have Bane Flight. You have Fired Fleet. You shoot near the other person's turn. So that means, if you're an Ogre player, I think it might be better to spread out. And this is what I usually like to do. I'm currently playing around with the idea of taking 2 Tyrants. They could both be on Stonehorns or Thunder Tusk, either way. I think they both are potentially good. One with Tenderizer for sure. The other one maybe a little bit more on the durable side, like with the the one that lets you heal when you just do a challenge. I think it's I forget what armor it is. But like,
that's okay.
Basically, you got 2 of these dudes. Cool. So that's like half your army is just toughness 6 guys with 9 wounds, and then you just in the rare slot take more. So you just have a lot of freaking giant ass toughness 6 guys with they're monstrous.
T6 now, makes this very difficult for lanterns to tear them down. T6 is that break point where it's very hard for them to be effective.
Yes. Now, Stonehorns have the I take 1 less wound from multi-wounds ability, which...
Oh, do they?
Yes.
That's
so
cute.
If you just have like 3 or 4 Stonehorns in your list, by like the 2 non-character ones and the 2 character ones, which, by the way, if people are having a kind of generic both character mounts and rare slots are the same 0 to 2 slot, then you wouldn't be allowed to do this, right?
Okay. Good to know.
But shrug, and then look at your opponent and say, "Are you sure?" And but yeah, then you also have. So I think that you could just have a lot of Stonehorns, which would get around the whole cannon problem. If you're, regular units, just having things like the Ogre Bulls, the Iron Guts, possibly the Trappers, just have somebody that scouts, and then just spread them out instead of having a big Death Star of them, I think is possibly better. And maybe you could just outfight the Lancers and the Jade Warriors, who are very low strength. They're like strength 3 and 4. And they're really good against armor. Like, Cathay is unbelievably strong against, I have a bunch of high elf infantry on foot. They just obliterate that kind of thing. But having like multi-wound toughness 4 guys who don't usually have that much armor and they rely on toughness instead, I think they've got a better bet, especially because Ring of Jet would win them on 6s. Yeah, so that's good.
They just typically, the army does some things very well, but high strength is not something that Cathay really focuses on. So things like ogres and multi-wounds, so things with multiple wounds, high toughness is inherently the opposite of how that army is currently constructed with most of its rule set.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have Gorgers as well as I would say, the ambushing threat of your dreams, because Gorgers would love to ambush Cathay because they don't have enough screening units to try to make them chase the butterflies. So they can just show up very easily. There's not going to be anything near the edge of the table to block them showing up. Then if a cannon tries to kill a Gorger, it's not trying to kill your Tyrants on Stonehorns, so that's good. And if they don't kill the Gorger, it's really fast and will just maul the crap out of even the Ogre crew. Because a lot of ambushing units
surprisingly fast.
Yeah. A lot of ambushing units don't beat an Ogre in combat, so that you actually can beat an Ogre.
The Gorgers are great. Though that is actually one of the best ambushing type of units to kill Cathay cannons, even with an Ogre. The Gorger unit is quite good.
So you're just seeing whether that happens or not. Now, you know what sucks about a Gorger, Mike? They have 4 wounds. So their unit strength 4. So they can't destroy baggage trains.
Okay. Well, one problem at a time. We're trying to kill Sky Lanterns right now.
It's really sad that you can't do... Okay, anyway. Yeah. So you got that.
They still have cannons though too, right? So you
I
definitely should be taking some of those,
I
right?
don't know, Mike. I don't know what it is about Ogre Iron Blaster cannons particularly, but they seem to have the highest chance in the game of blowing themselves up. I so
I
often.
think that's specifically Evans ogre iron
No, I
blasters,
never
but
take them because of that. I see how many
okay.
sad people show up with their Iron Blasters and have them just lose a third of your
Well,
army on the
that's
first
true
turn.
for any cannon, but I've also seen them be incredibly powerful. So depends. I guess you have to ask yourself: are you feeling lucky? Whether you want to take
I
them
am
or not.
not. I am not.
Evan is not feeling lucky, but maybe you are. So, but
Ugh.
they do still hit very hard, and you do have cannons. And again, as we said it multiple times, you have to have multiple things to focus fire to take the lanterns down. One thing by itself, one source is won't be enough.
Yeah, do think that Mournfang Cavalry, if I'm in 3 or 4 of those guys with that like reroll a wound banner on their impact hits, if they do Feign Flight or whatever, you still catch them, you still do the D3 impact hits
Oh
each.
yeah, oh yeah.
Mournfang potentially just have enough violence where even if they're not in a challenge, they can just do enough damage to kill them. So
They hit so super
yeah,
hard.
I think that ogres might actually be one of the best legacy factions for this because you have way more units that have a good shot at this, especially because you have the Stonehorn guys who can just be taking less damage from cannons. Now, normally you'd be like, "Oh crap, they have cannons! I'm shitting myself." But because you have the Stonehorns, I think you're a bit better off, right?
Yeah, I think it's actually you have so because you have stone horns, you have one option with ogres that you really don't have with the other factions is that you at the right moment in time, don't just do it turn one. You can pressure the Cathay lanterns, right?
Yeah.
Because they do have range, they're incredibly durable. So there's going to be your go turn where you're like, I'm going to, this is the moment, my trap is set up, I'm positioned correctly. I'm going to pressure the Cathay lanterns. I have my Noblars behind me. They can't fly over my stone hordes. I'm positioned my army correctly. They have a huge threat range in front of them, and then you have your them plus your Mournfang. So like you can pressure them and get in their face with a you have a much greater success chance of that than most other armies really don't even have that option at all.
Yeah, and you have you've got the Cannibal Totem for a regeneration save banner. That's pretty useful to survive
Mhm.
those shooting attacks. I do think that
Yep.
you can also take a lot of Vanguard units, and so if you just have a lot of Vanguarding things like the Man-Eaters or Yetis, stuff like that,
Hmm.
you could just get across the table fast enough, and they're like, oh, because the biggest worry you have is going second. The first turn they put the Sky Lanterns 1 inch in front of you, and now you can't march 12 inches, which you really want to do. Instead, you're busy
Hmm.
charging them and chasing them while they feign flight away from you, and then you don't
Yeah.
go as far as you want to because you're not going to overrun either. You're just going to be stuck there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you really want to go first, and then be able to go 12 inches across the table to the midline and say, now what?
There's definitely ogres have the ability to do a threat overload where if you get to go first and you get Vanguard, you shove so many units in his face. Yes, he's going to get one turn to shoot the heck out of you, but no matter what, on turn two, you are charging 4 or 5 things, ideally his cannons and his lanterns. That is something ogres can do. Risky, but high risk, high reward. Yep, it definitely they have the potential.
Yeah, that's actually making me really excited to bring those guys out of the box. So I've been thinking about which army I'm playing
Because we
next.
haven't seen them as much lately, have we?
No,
Yeah.
we haven't, and I can
Now's
represent
now's now's their time. All right, move
Skaven.
on. Ooh,
Yes.
Skaven. Yeah. Warp lightning, warp stones, warp guns, all the warp. Um, you're gonna die in droves. You need to make sure it doesn't matter.
So the biggest concern, right, is that the is actually the bombing run now because you can have lots of wounds. So the Dragonfires are a little bit less critical here. I think it's more the
Yep.
Strength 5 AP2 bombing run that will make your 400-point Storm Vermin unit turn to absolute ashes in 1 turn.
Yeah, they will not survive. Period.
And you can't solve this problem by deploying in fewer ranks so that the templates don't hurt you as bad because you
Nope.
have warband and you need it to have good leadership. So if you ever deploy
Yep.
like with my white lions, I'm going back to going 10 wide 2 deep because I just don't want to get templated with
Yeah.
the
Skaven don't have
bombing.
that
Yeah, you don't really
ability.
have that ability. So I mean, I guess your troops, you just know that they are definitely screwed. So I think that the main thing you do is you use your clan rats and anything like that. It's kind of like bait. You just put them forward and
Yep.
say, "Do you want to blow these guys up? Sure, go for it."
That's really what it is. You're just
Yeah,
saying feed them clan rats. Do not even bother with storm vermin or plague monks versus the lanterns. Seriously, there's no point. So feed them things to give yourself. You need 3 good turns of shooting. So
Yeah.
you need to just feed them things you don't care about. So you have 3 turns for whether it's your Jezzails, whether it's your Warp Lightning Cannon, whether it's your Globadiers, whether it's your Rattling Guns. You need about 3 turns to pull down those Sky Lanterns. So you need to keep them busy for 3 turns.
So the Warp Lightning Cannon is probably the best bet because you just get to draw the line on the ground. You get to zap through multiple things. You can shoot through your own guys. You can shoot through terrain. You can just not give an absolute crap. And as long as you roll far enough, you shoot stuff. Then you have to roll high enough on the strength, which, I mean, if you roll a 2 or a 4, it's not going to be that
Well, you
great,
are playing Skaven,
right?
so
Yeah.
Skaven are not known for being a reliable army.
So if you roll a 2, a 4, or a misfire, you're not going to be happy. So then you've got the ability to roll, the 6 or 8 or 10, which is, so you basically, it's a 50-50 whether it's going to be a pretty decent shot. And then if you play with our FAQ or other communities' FAQ and you do multi-wounds, because normally in this book, the Warp Lightning Cannon it does not do multi-wound damage, which is
But I believe,
weird.
as Evan said, our community has FAQ'd that, and I believe most other communities have FAQ'd that as well, saying, no, it should do multi-wounds. Again, check with your local community scene, see what rule sets they're playing with before you go to the event with your list. Yeah.
I would be saying, oh, look, the Hell Pit Abomination, it's got random movement. I will say the Hell Pit Abomination does have random movement. So you can get it into, if you get into melee with the thing. It is toughness 5, which means it will just take twice as much damage on a stand and shoot from Dragonfire bombs as anything else. And its only save is regeneration. Now it doesn't have flammable, so it doesn't have to keep its regeneration. Mike, the Hell Pit does have a lot of really weird rules for its attacks. It can do like the feed attack, where just automatically, if you hit, it automatically does like D3 wounds with no save or something like that.
To your point, the problem with the Hell Pit is, again, like most things in the Skaven army, it's a little bit too expensive. That being said, its random mover is a hard counter. Random mover is very powerful counter to Sky Lantern. So if you put your Hell Pit Abomination, even at toughness 5 in the open, it's going to get ripped to shreds by a lantern or 2. But to your point, don't put it in the open. Don't charge across the field with him. Get him to come to you. I said it before, I'll say it again. You need about 3 turns of good shooting. This is a counter move. So you want him hiding behind a forest, hiding behind impassable terrain, hiding in a position where, cool, fly over my army, hiding behind the hill. I'm going to random move into you because I don't need line of sight to charge you, and you can't stand and shoot, right? So that is where he is a very effective deterrent the smart Cathay player won't go anywhere near him. So suddenly he's gaslighting the lantern, saying, zone control, don't come over here. That is very powerful, right? Again, this is assuming you're playing on tables and events and going to places that have terrain on their table. Unfortunately, a lot of the events out there have very little terrain, we've seen, but we're seeing more and more terrain appearing on more and more tables out there, which is great. To be fair, terrain takes some time, a lot of effort and energy and cost to get it out there. So different communities are going to take them time to build more terrain for their events. But random mover is a hard counter. It is zone control. It can definitely intimidate the Sky Lanterns and zone out some critical area.
Yeah, I would recommend that if you're taking it, you put them on the flank of your army because the Sky Lantern doesn't want to be anywhere near the board edge where it might fall back off the table. It doesn't want to be anywhere over there where it's going to take too long for it to get back to the main force. So it always wants to be
that happened at our last event multiple times. I was going from table to table at the doubles event, and so there's 5 Cathay players, and they would all point out to me, I made a mistake. I'm like, what? And I see their Sky Lantern. They were trying to flank because they really want to get their movement. They're trying to get around the enemy army, and they got way too close to the table edge, and they gave ground or whatever, and they flew off, and they didn't actually get killed in battle. They got shoved off the battlefield. So
but just to be
that's
clear,
a real thing. Their bases are big.
Just to be clear, that's because they're unfamiliar with how to use it. The more time passes, the more that the players who are using this will learn the mistakes not to make, and then you will not be able to take advantage of them making mistakes, right? You're going to have to be
but now they know to not go over there. The point is that is less space that they actually have to use. So again, the more familiar your opponents get, the more familiar you get. There's kind of a balance there, but the point is you are looking for ways to prevent the Sky Lantern from just saying, I can go wherever I want. You are really looking for ways to try and restrict that so you as the opponent says, no, this is the space I'm going to allow you to go to. I've planned this in advance. I've positioned my army. Again, most games, said it many times, the movement phase is the most important phase in the game, and positioning your army so you can dictate these are the places the lantern can go. That's a big statement, easier said than done when you're being shot at by Sky Lanterns. So again, it's not a silver bullet. It's just something to keep in mind.
So I do think that Warpluck Giselles are probably one of the better shooting units that's not artillery, because you
It's
got
their
like
ballistic
strength
skill is
6.
just not great. Oh, it hits like a truck. The
Yeah,
problem is
well, you're
hitting.
both skill 3, but they're going to have no cover because they're a large target. They're probably going to
That's
be
true.
less than 36 inches away, so you're not probably going to be at close range. You probably have no penalties at all. You're probably just hitting on 4 plus. So because if your short range is 18, and they have to get close to you to do their nonsense.
Yeah,
So
that's true. Because almost all the Sky Lanterns are bringing the Fire Dragon bombs, and so their range is very, very short. So they want to get really, really close. So that's a very good
yeah,
point. They are typically it's very likely they will get within your 18-inch range. Absolutely. And again, to the Skaven players out there, don't just deploy your Giselles on the hill just because there's a hill. Look for creating kill lanes and ambushes and trap. Again, you win and lose so many games in the movement phase. So look to put your Giselles on the flanks and things and try to create threat lanes that this is the only place the Sky Lanterns truly can go to. And that's when you're really going to get your advantage. Just so often I see them put on a hill and it becomes this big target. And then it's a big problem. You want to hide them because they're also not very durable, right? So if someone
yeah.
fires if Sky Lantern, you'll get one turn because if the Sky Lantern gets within range, your Giselle unit is gone. So you need to make sure that you're
I actually
positioned
think that
correctly.
might be a really good reason to either have your clan rats or rat swarms or something just deploy in such a way where there's no way for the lantern to land 9 inches from your Giselles. Just
Mm-hmm.
just put your even if the clan rats have to get bombed, blow up, fail their panic, and run off the table, at least nothing. At least no one got to the Giselles that turn. It took another turn, so don't leave enough room
Yep.
to land next to you.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good call.
I do think that everything else you have is basically just you have Grey Seers who have Plague of Rust and or magic missiles.
Plague Arrest is huge versus the Sky Lanterns.
Sure.
Use it.
Yeah, and then you've got a lot of you've got a lot of like throwing knives and
Yep.
stuff from the
You
night
you
marks.
have you have the magic missiles and the firepower. What you need is time.
Yeah,
You need
yeah.
at least 3 turns to really tear them down.
But I think that Skaven probably have one of the hardest times of all the ones we talked about today. I mean, you just have such bad leadership. Your units are very vulnerable to being bombing run. Nothing has.
Listen, you don't play
a ton of
Skaven
armor.
because you think it's going to be easy. You're playing
Not
Skaven
really.
because you love Skaven,
That's
right?
yeah,
That's why
that's
you're
true.
playing Skaven.
That's true.
Yep.
Vampire counts.
Yeah.
Well,
Vampire counts actually have a lot of things that they can do. Not necessarily as many as the Chaos Dwarfs, but you could first out of the gate take your zombie dragon. Again, we've mentioned it multiple times. Dragons are an effective deterrent for Sky Lanterns, and you can again, similar to what I've mentioned with the Black Orc and other things, build your vampire in a defensive build, right? Because you don't necessarily go for that. I'm going to one shot the Sky Lantern because I'm putting an Ogre Blade in my vampire. It's you want to make sure you have the regen save and the ward save and the good armor so that when you get shot coming in or you get shot by a cannon, you still are alive and you can still kill that lantern on a couple different turns. So that's something to look at. And then the screams are also very effective. Cathay's leadership is decent, but again, the whole taking the lore of necromancy and I've seen it many times. We've seen it in the games. Bringing the leadership down of the Sky Lanterns and then screaming at them from multiple sources is actually very effective. One of the biggest weaknesses of screams is the range. It's a very short range power. But guess what? The Sky Lanterns, they have to get close. So actually, it's pretty good. And guess what? Your Banshees are ethereal, and guess what? There's no magic on the Sky Lanterns. So actually, rather than having to cast a spell to take ethereal units, guess what? The Vampire Counts have the most ethereal units in the entire game. Suddenly, those units that you would never consider taking before, like a unit of ghosts, right? When's the last time you saw ghosts on the table, right? Right? Or more wraiths, right? Or the hex wraiths, right? Just dude, a unit of hex wraiths, a unit of you take those ethereal units and suddenly, hey, cannons and lanterns, I don't care, you can't hurt me. Talk about board control city, right? The vampire counts have the most unconventional methods to deal with Sky Lanterns, but they have tons on top of which, again, you can still, they're not really a magic missile bunker army, but the screams, the ethereal units, the vampire on the dragon, and or terror guys with more screams is very, very powerful. Do not think your brick of 40 zombies or brick of 40 Graveguard are going to survive 2 lanterns shooting at them and you're going to raise them back. It's not going to work out the way you want it to. Yes, the Graveguard for Vampire counts are more durable than they are for the Tomb Kings because they have the better armor, heavy versus light armor.
Yeah, and the
You're still
Dreadnought banner.
going to be right, but you're still going to get obliterated. You should not be taking a big thick block. Now, if you go into again a wide formation, okay, that's a
Yeah, you might
different
just have to take them
conversation.
off your tray and make them wider. Just to, because again, the bombing run itself, when you're in a square, the amount of damage you do goes up by like a quadratic equation.
It's
So
huge.
yeah, and if you become a thin line and it scatters d6, there's a good chance it actually doesn't hit anybody because it actually just scatters off from the center and doesn't go onto any of your troops. So if you're in a
Mhm.
narrower formation, you have a much better chance of not taking any damage from the bombing run. And if you're in a square
Mhm.
formation, you have a chance of just half your unit died to just the bombing run because it's strength 5 AP2, so it is no freaking joke. Okay, it is
Yep.
insane.
Yep. Other things to be careful of: don't assume your Blood Knights are going to work. The Blood
Yeah,
Knights
Blood
hit
Knights
like a
basically
truck.
are neutered against this.
And it's great that they have a 2-up armor save. They have 1 wound though, and the Sky Lanterns shoot so many shots they're going to rip them to
Well,
pieces.
also they have to
Do not
accept
rely on the Blood
challenges.
Knights.
So
They do. They
so
do.
again,
Every single one of
and
them.
back to the whole FAQ question of can even the regular non-character ones challenge? And if they could, then Blood Knights are worse than worthless against this, right? But
Correct.
back to yeah, so
Correct.
we'll have to go check in on that. But the Blood Knights again used to be the terror of everything. I kind of think it's just what most competitive lists are doing is taking the hex rates and they actually just take a unit of 6 in marching column, so they are literally just doing the I'm jumping over you attack because at the very least then they can do something to the lantern without getting hit back,
Hmm.
and then they're ethereal.
Hmm.
And hey, even if they do get I guess Cathay used to have no answer to this at all until the Ring of Jet showed up. Now they have tons of it.
But it's
So
not. Well, I mean, it's they have some answers. I
yeah.
wouldn't say they have a ton of answers.
Well, it depends
Other
whether they
things
take 7 or not. There are lists that are taking
well,
7 rings of jet, but yes.
the meta is always changing. You're not wrong, sir.
Yeah.
Dire wolves are also your friend because they're very cheap. You could spread them out, right? You could vanguard with them, cover the board again. Zone controlling ghouls. Are ghouls going to kill a Sky Lantern? Not necessarily. It's not about ghouls killing them. It's about zoning the Sky Lanterns from flying behind you, right? Because you could take ghouls. They are skirmishing. They could take up a lot of board space. They are more expensive than 3 points, but they are also a way to zone your backfield in a good skirmish formation, right? And you don't have to worry about panicking, right, with your undead army. So okay, and again, if you're shooting your ghouls and not shooting something more critical, then you're in a pretty good place. So because the one of the things you also need to figure out is how you're going to take down the cannons while you're dealing with the lanterns. Your screams and ethereal units absolutely will rip apart the lanterns. You need a few turns to do it, but you will be able to do it no problem. As long as you just need to make sure you don't have a 500-point graveguard unit you sacrificed, they're bombing the crap out of it, or they catch your level 4 necromancer on the mortis engine and suddenly your general's dead. You've got to be careful about these things. So your traditional I sit in the center of the board, come get some, not going to work for the Sky Lanterns. They will be able to blast through that. They hit hard enough. So you have to update your list and be more flexible and think of new strategies. You do need to take down those cannons, though, at the same time. So unfortunately, you don't have the scouting units. You don't have the ambushing units. So you really need to look at those unit of fell bats before, because there's an ogre now. So typically, you try and MSU your fell bats. You might want to take a whole bunch more. Because you could take more than 3 in the unit, right? So look for other ways and opportunities to get across the table to at least, even if you don't kill the cannon, tie it up and make sure you're not going to crumble. Because even if you go like, oh, I'll take a 4th fell bat, well, over a round or 2 of combat, you're going to crumble anyway, and then you're going to be gone. So really be looking at taking, at least 6 models in the fell bat unit or other ways to get to those cannons while you're dealing with the
Right.
lanterns.
And again, Felbat's another unit where it's like you could beat a regular cannon crew, or at least you have a decent chance. Against like the
Yeah.
ogre guy who's usually in the unit, I think your better bet is just you block their line of sight. You just stand in front of them, and
Stand
then
in
if
front
they
of them.
waste their shots having to grape shot you, cool. They didn't fire at something else. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Something else you didn't mention. So I love Vargeists. They're one of my favorites. I think the Vargeists are worse than horrible in this situation because you can't move them anywhere to threaten to charge people without the Sky Lantern going, cool. While I'm busy shooting you, I'm going to just make sure that my Sky Lantern ends up within charge range of your Vargeists, and now they have to charge it, and then I get to shoot
Yeah,
again. And so I think that the
that's why I didn't
Vargeists
mention
turn
them.
into one of the worst units in the game in that matchup because of they are going to suicide themselves, and there's nothing you can do to prevent it from happening.
And then the biggest problem with the Vargeist, why they're not going to be able to survive that, is they're only toughness 4.
Yeah.
So the lanterns will rip them to pieces.
All right. So then the other thing that is that vampire counts can do, because if the screams weren't enough for you, I really, really like the idea that you take the Cairn Wraiths and the Banshees and whatever the heck else you want, and you try to lower just one per turn, just lower one of them's leadership with Spirit Leech, and then charge them with 5 or 6 terror causing units in the same turn. They have to pass every single terror check on, like, I don't know, leadership 7 or something after it gets lowered, leadership 6.
Yeah, I think it starts at 8,
Yeah.
so it goes to 7. You could lower it more,
Great.
depending on how many spells you get off.
And as soon as they fail it, cool. Whatever unit's closest, that one chases, the rest try to redirect into the second one. That is really fun and really screws with them because Sky Lanterns are not immune to psychology, so they're unbreakable, so they can't run away from combat, but they can flee from a terror check, which is probably an oversight. They probably just forgot that would happen. So take advantage of that.
Hey, maybe.
Because they literally can't like flee from the charge like normally. But yeah, if they break
but
and
to
flee,
Evan's point, the vampire counts, you're all familiar with the leadership bomb, right?
Yeah.
And such for Banshee Screams, but there's also the terror bomb, right? And the terror bomb is the vampire counts have more access to more cost-effective terror-causing units than any other army in the game. A Wraith is expensive and it doesn't do a lot of damage. It has a great weapon with 2 attacks. Ooh, it doesn't do anything, but it causes terror, right? And it's like, what is it, like 50 points or something? So you can
take causes terror. It can also, even if it doesn't do
terror.
even if it does nothing to any Sky Lanterns, it's also incredible at just, I'm gonna walk across the table slowly and eventually I'll charge the cannon. The cannon has to take the leadership 7 terror check, and if it fails it runs off the table probably. If it passes, it gets into combat with something it can't hurt. So,
right. But also the zombie dragon causes terror, the terror guys causes terror, the hex race cause terror, the normal wraiths cause terror. You can take a vampire ability to cause terror. There's magic the banners to cause terror. You could make your whole army practically cause terror. In addition to, there are spells that can make you cause terror. So to Evan's point, if you just lower that, their leadership 7 to 8 or 8 to 7, that's a 50-50 chance you're going to pass that die roll. And if you make them make 4 tests.
Yeah.
The odds and you have to make the tests immediately. Again, if you're not familiar with how terror works, as soon as terror things charging this, immediately take a test. Cool, you pass that. Now next, this charges this. Immediately take a test. You have to immediately take them. It's very, very, very powerful.
Yeah.
In particular with lanterns that typically are out of the range of the general or out of range anything that would allow them to re-roll because they are a forward deploying unit and they have to get really, really close to do that.
There's nothing in their list that lets them re-roll it.
That's right. So it's actually the terror bomb, taking a ton of terror units and multi-charging. Great combo.
Yeah, and I just now remembered that the Demon Slayer Scars ability from the Ogre Kingdoms gives any character that buys it for I think it's like 20 points, gives them terror. So you can do the same thing in Ogres. You can have 2 or 3 Stonehorns. They all have terror already. You can give it to your champion of the Iron Gut unit. Now he's got terror. Cool. Give it to the Mournfang unit. Now it has terror. And if you're wondering why terror is so cool, it's not just that if they fail it and you run them down, you catch them. It's also that it keeps them from standing and shooting. Because if they fail the terror check and you don't even catch up to them, at the very least, they start the turn having to rally, and then they already count as moving. So they already get a -1 to hit if they're not using weapons that are quick to fire like they usually have. But they are not going to stand and shoot, and stand and shoot is terrifying because it's twice as many shootings. They're shooting you in your turn and the enemy turn, and when they do that much damage, you need to try to stop that from happening, right?
Yeah, great combo. All right, cool. So any other legacy factions?
That was the last of the legacy factions. Now we're going to talk about what happens when you are playing Cathay against Cathay.
And tricky.
And you're trying to basically hold your own or figure out what you want to do, especially if you are basically trying to figure out like a more balanced Cathay list. Like, what are you trying to do there, right?
Yeah, different approaches, right? And effectively you have 3 options. Either A, you try to fight fire with fire. Okay, well, let's not talk about that because that's a boring conversation. I take more Sky Lanterns than you. Whatever. Okay, that's one. The other option is you try and take a counter to it. All right, what units in the Cathay list will help you counter Lanterns? Then the third option is you take a more unconventional approach and try a completely different strategy where you're not necessarily trying to take down the Lanterns, you're trying to win the game in some other way. Unfortunately, Cathay's roster is not nearly as fleshed out or robust as many of the other older armies because again it's like wave 1 of a new army release. We've seen this in 40K and other things, so that's a very small selection of models, right? So I think really the best approach, if you're not trying to fight fire with fire, is what else can you do, Evan, or what else can you take if you know you're going to be fighting Lanterns in your Cathay and you're trying to destroy the Lanterns, not necessarily take with Lanterns yourself.
Okay, well, let's just say you had none at all. So you can have your
Okay.
cannons. You're the cannons that fire twice, the cannons that fire twice, and bounce through multiple sky lanterns. That's always good. Nothing wrong with that. You can have the fire rain rocket battery, which even if especially if you, for example, want to take one of each because it looks cooler. This one also has the D6 damage on the central hull, so there's that on one of the.
Oh, does it? Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure it's either that or it's at the very least like the D3+1 or something pretty good. So it's like strength 5, so
Okay.
it's not like strength 8 like a normal stone thrower is, but you have
Okay.
some kind of a central hull better rocket that you can use.
Gotcha.
What the most recent London GT list winner was he was taking a Shugengan Lord with the Monkey King's Wisdom and then the 2 arcane items that give you +1 spell each, so that you know all 6 illusion spells. So you know all 6 illusion spells, and you have the Monkey King's Wings of Wisdom, which is one of the best weapons in the game, and you just get to do Doppelganger on somebody who might not have any way to dispel it. So you have that as an option. Miao
Yeah, so he
Ying,
was clearly trying to take things to counter lanterns. Yeah.
yeah, I think so, and I think it did well for him.
Mhm.
Miao Ying, I forgot this because I just played against her last night. First time she's gotten in combat. She's a dragon who has strength 7 attacks, and she has strikes first.
Oh, does she?
Yeah. So even when she gets charged by somebody, she's like, "No, I go before you." So I countercharged with like 4 Demigryph Knights into Miao Ying, and she killed 3 of them before they got to attack.
Ouch.
Yeah.
But the point is, you do have a dragon. The dragon is very powerful. The dragon absolutely can eat sky lanterns, no problem.
And if she ever gets blown up, she can also just turn back into a human, go away, get healed, and then cast spells and stuff. So I think she's pretty good. And her lightning ability, if you actually roll high enough for it to go off, because it's a 10 plus, is
Mhm.
pretty cool. So that one's good. You also have the Sentinel, which is another unit that if it's pretty good against standing and shooting a Sky Lantern shooting at it. So there's that. And if
Mhm.
it gets into combat, it can do the attacks that do the multiple wound damage each. So it can just try to just do multi wounds into it. And if you take the Granite Sentinel has the same like -1 from a multi wound damage. So I personally like the Granite Sentinels right now. I think that a lot of people are going, cool, Jade Sentinel, I just have another Fireball guy. I don't see that there's any reason to do that, especially because if you want to shoot people, just take the Sky Lanterns to do that, right? So Granite Sentinel, very durable, can survive the cannonballs and can survive the Sky Lantern shots, and then just whack people with that immensely massive sword. So that's cool. Um, the only thing in the army that kind of doesn't really do it for you is the regular Jade Warriors, because they're basically just going to get blown up. So I think the
They
main thing you
will.
do with them is you basically try, like the strategy we've been talking about before, you deploy really wide so that the template doesn't hurt you as much, and then you just walk forward
Yep.
slowly and capture the objective and stand there. You can get
Yep.
stubborn with the 3 of armor save with your parry in combat. So against combat, you're fine, and then everyone else is just you're a relatively cheap guy who can just stand there and get blown up just like everybody else, right?
And how many of their lancers can ambush? Is it 1 unit or more than 1 unit?
No, every unit can buy ambush if it wants to. It's just you can only have 0 to 1 per thousand in core, so you can get like 2
Gotcha.
multiple ambushing. I think that I think that against the Cathay matchup, you probably do want to ambush, and then just try to get them to show up and
You
try to
do.
take out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You want to kill those their artillery, because
yeah.
you're standing in the middle of the field, they're just going to obliterate it by other things. So it's really about, I think you take at least 2 of them ambushing to try and take out some cannons. Yeah.
So if you play Jade Fleet, you can also have Empire of Man allies. I think that the Outriders are probably the main thing that you would want from the allied force. Now, Outriders can get the grenade launching blunderbuss, which, hint hint, grenade launching blunderbuss does the exact same thing a single Dragonfire bomb guy does. It's just that it only has 1 guy of it, but it's still very good. So you can have a grenade launching blunderbuss guy and some repeater guns, and that's a good number of strength 4 shots to shoot at a lantern and to try to get the lantern to go fight them. Because to be honest, if he go blows up 5 Outriders, yeah, whatever. Or even 4, you can take them in units of 4. I actually kind of like that idea because
Oh,
again,
really?
yeah, because if
Oh.
you took a unit of 8, right, the Sky Lantern probably blows up 7 or 8 of them in one go anyway. So why not just have 2 units of
Probably.
4 and have it waste half its shots, right?
Yeah. And I think that is the right strategy versus the Sky Lantern. There's just too many shots. It's too overwhelming.
Yeah, and you can have the state missile troops for crossbows. I mean, again, these are normally like core units in Empire, so that's why I'm usually focusing just on the Outriders because they're at the very least kind of in that specialty type place. So I think that if you had you say I don't like the lantern, I think it looks silly. I think it always falls over when you're playing the game or whatever, and you want to play Cathay but you don't want to use them. There's massive number of things you can do in here.
Yep. And pro tip: if don't use the flight stand, get a brass rod from the hobby store. They're very cost effective and super durable. Um, All right, cool. So we did it. So we've gone through all the core factions and legacy factions and the mirror match of Cathay versus Cathay. Right, we want to focus on these aren't silver bullets, but hopefully there's some tips and tricks, maybe some things you hadn't thought about that could maybe inspire your gameplay or maybe unlock some new strategies on how to handle the lanterns. Keep in mind, none of these are, hey, I do this, I'm going to win. They are very powerful. They're going to remain very powerful. I am confident GW will address it at some point. It's just not clear whether it will be a 3-month addressing it or 6-month addressing it, but that is the pattern we've seen from the old world team. So either it's right around the corner in the next month, they hit our 3-month mark, or it might be around Christmas when they address it, would be my expectations. But I'm confident they will, because they have already shown to be very responsive to some of the other major threats and other alpha predators in the game, and I'm confident they're just that too. That being said, Cathay is a super cool list. I am so happy this army is here, this roster is here, these new models are incredible. It's bringing tons of more players into the game. I want players to enjoy Cathay, both to play against them and to play with them, and they're super cool models to put them on the table. But maybe there's just some things here that can make the game a little bit more enjoyable, a little bit more competitive for both players on the battlefield.
Yeah, the word I usually use is engaging. So there are things that could be very powerful that one player can do that lead to very little engagement from your opponent. Especially if the opponent takes a list that's like, for example, Empire Knightly Orders and has no way to dispel, no way to shoot anybody. So if you never want to fight in combat and you just cast spells or shoot me, I don't have any way to engage with you, right?
Yeah, you're in trouble. Yeah. Okay, cool. So there we go. We wrapped it up. And Evan, any last closing thoughts, sir?
Everyone out there, you can stay legendary with your legacy factions. Don't worry. I think if you look at the core rulebook and the lore that's in there and stuff, I think that it's very clear that the writers of this game love the legacy factions and want them to come back and want to put them out there. I think it's highly likely that each edition of the game will have, oh, hey, guess what? There's 1 or 2 that are coming back or whatever, and it'll seem like we're getting a nice Christmas present when really we should have gotten them from the beginning. But you know what? That's fine. And I think that if you are patient, your prayers will be answered. That's what I was going to say.
All right. We'll see you next time.